So, Chris, I thought we could start with a check-in. So far, we're about halfway through the year of the expansion pass library episodes, and I thought I'd see what you thought about is the expansion pass Nintendo $50 a year plan worth it to you so far? Uh,
Oh,
do you think do you think if you had to make a recommendation at this point, do you think you'd say, yeah, I did the $50 expansion pass, or maybe just the $20 Nintendo Online that just has SNES, NES, and Game Boy
yeah.
titles? Or perhaps just save your money and, buy modern games that are more fun.
Well, and I'm trying not to go into my review of one of the side games that I played, but I would say yes. It had and like that's it occurred to me when I actually went to play only one side game this time around for this month, but it was one that I suddenly thought of and was actually telling my wife about, and then I'm like, wait, hold on, and I pulled it up on the Nintendo Switch, and so like that alone was worth it to to just be able to like suddenly go to it and start playing and even show it off to my very confused wife, who's not really a video game player at all. So,
I think I might be starting to lean toward just the $20 a year, the
oh,
smaller
really?
Nintendo Online,
Okay.
because like the three that you get added to is the Game Boy Advance, which has very few
Hmm.
titles. It does have WarioWare, which is super
Yeah,
fun,
yeah.
but it's pretty limited. And then the SNES feels like it might just be because we didn't have a Sega, or excuse me,
Well,
the
no, that
Sega titles, not SNES.
yeah.
We didn't have one, so we didn't play a ton of them, so the nostalgia isn't quite there. And we
Hmm.
also have the Super Nintendo, which is the same generation, so we could play games from that generation on the that are more fun to me. And then the N64, which does have some pretty good titles that I'm eager to continue exploring, but I just don't know if it's worth the extra $30 a year at this point. But I have been having a ton of fun. I did one more time, like a big, 5, 10 minute play a ton of different games, 8 game a segment that we can go through in a little bit. And that has been super fun. And that is, again, most of the titles are in the SNES and NES libraries and the Game Boy. So you get probably 75% of the games at just $20 a year, which feels a little bit better to me at this point.
See, if you had asked me a couple months ago, I probably would have said that because I was playing more Super Nintendo games out of that library. But it really, like I said, it pushed me over the edge to be able to go right to a game um, that I had been thinking about, and then also, and it's a beloved game that I've had from the N64 days, and so to be able to go right to that and like replay it was like, yeah, but and that's the only thing. It's the N64 games. I think it it makes it worth it to me, but $30 more a month, I can understand if somebody's like, I don't want to pay $30 more just for N64 games. I can
$30 a year
understand
to
that.
be clear.
Or a year. Thank you. Everything else
Mhm.
is a month. Nintendo's nice and does it a
Yeah,
year.
yeah.
Um, so, um, well, no, actually, in that way, I don't know. It's not too bad in that way for
No,
for
I mean,
50 bucks a year.
both of them are very reasonable. Like there's some
Yeah.
serious value here, but I have there's only a handful of titles in this entire library, all 6 libraries, um, that I would spend like hours and hours, like more than 10 hours playing. So that kind of leans toward like if you really want to invest deeply in a game, then you probably just want to buy modern games. But for
Yeah.
the terms of hours of entertainment that come in 10 to 30 minute to 2 hour chunks, you really can't beat the library of so many games.
Oh yeah, that's all that's in the $20 one. I mean, especially for Nintendo and Super Nintendo, there's a ton of classic ones that you could pull. Yeah. So, I mean, Game Boy Advance, I don't think there's a lot of titles anyway. I feel
Yeah,
like
I don't even think there's 2 dozen in the Game Boy Advance. I do think that, like, if you're talking about the library, uh,
that's possible.
outside of the
Yeah.
online sphere, all the
Yeah.
actual cartridges they made, that it's a pretty robust system, but
Gosh,
what has
yeah.
actually made it to console, to digital console, is pretty small so far. Hopefully, it continues to expand over time.
Because that was kind of
But
our small era of gaming. I think we both had the advance. I was starting, it was in that whole like I'm concentrating more in school. Was I really? I don't know, but I was trying to. So then
that
I
was
think it was that era.
2001 was when the Game Boy Advance came
So
out.
that was
So
college for
I think
me.
you were
um
college and I was high school.
yeah, it, you know, I was playing games. I wasn't playing the Game Boy Advance as much. So that because I remember now. Oh, Advance Wars I had and played a lot, but that's not necessarily a Nintendo title. It could end up in the Virtual Console, but I don't know because it's a
Yeah.
totally different company, and they just made an actual remake of it too. So
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right. That's cool.
yeah, so
Um, so we'll revisit this idea of
yeah.
whether or not we recommend the library when we get to the end of this, but just sort of a halfway point check in. I think that's where we're at for now.
Two brothers play a game. Two brothers play a game. Two brothers play a game. Then they will rate that game.
Welcome to a Two Brothers Play a Game. I was about to say mini-sode. Oh, this is a full sode. No mini about it. I'm Josh,
I'm Chris.
and this is a podcast where we two brothers play a game we found on sale for the Nintendo Switch, except that currently in 2024, we are playing games we found in the Nintendo Switch Online Expansion Pass library. In the first half, we'll talk about some smaller titles that we individually checked out, and then in the back half, we discuss and review the game or games of the month that we both played. This time, the big game is Pokemon Trading Card Game, Pokemon TCG for the Game
Pokemon.
Boy Color. Now, I have another big list to run through, and I did it first last time. So how about you go first with your game this time? And
Okay,
just before you say it, based on what you've said so far, my guess is Star Fox 64.
that is a good guess, but it was not that.
Oh, bummer.
I might
So what'd you play?
have to do that. I played Yoshi's Story.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, and it came up in conversation, like I was alluding to with my wife, and it was because my my ringtone for the longest time was actually their song that they play at the beginning.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because I loved it. They're like I always that was one of my favorite games for the N64 because I love Yoshi to begin with, and then it's like baby Yoshis, which is so adorable. And they did the cutest things in the game, and I loved it. So I was trying to explain all of it and just be like, no, 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 you don't understand it. This is like the best thing. And then I'm like, okay, no, hold on. And like I tried to find videos and I couldn't. So I'm like, oh, I have my game. Like I could just play the game for you. So I did. Um and yeah, I enjoyed going back to it. um so it's a funny thing because they've done a lot of different Yoshi games, and so I do have also gosh, this is where it breaks down. I was trying to remember all the different names. The one that they did make for the Nintendo Switch, is that Yoshi's World?
Oh, I do not
Yoshi's,
know the Yoshi titles
this
well
is
enough to.
terrible. I might have to look this up. But I have played that and enjoyed it. In like that's what I had in mind for some reason is
Mhm.
Yoshi's Woolly World. Isn't that what it is?
That does sound familiar. I'm pulling it up
It looks all
online to try to
knit
find a
and
list.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um so
Woolly World was the Wii U, actually. Yoshi's Crafted World was the Switch title, which
okay.
also
I
sounds
actually
like.
I think I mean I played both. I'm trying to think. Did I get the one? I must have gotten the one for Wii U. I didn't play the one for Wii U as much. They did do Crafted World more. So So I played a lot of the different Yoshi games, and I've always enjoyed them. But Yoshi's Story to me has always been the very very fun one for, I will say, for some reason, because I think that there's some neat innovative features that they've done in all the Yoshi games. But I really liked just how fun Yoshi's Story is. I feel like the music, the sound, um, their innovativeness of like concentrating on the fruit was was one of the better systems, I think, for it. Um, and I very much liked the way that they would progress the story, that it was supposed to be like a story, that you're going chapter by chapter. And it was like the Papa Book thing. So I feel like it's one of the better ones that had everything kind of come together in a really fun way. And and so playing it for me, I mean, it brought back tons of nostalgia, and um, it had a good enough challenge that it wasn't frustrating, but that it brought in the challenge aspect again. And so to have that, I think it still is just a good game, a good platformer to play, I think. So just super well done to
Yeah,
begin
I
with.
was looking at pictures of it to try to jog my memory, and that little smiling flower that is your
Yeah.
health meter
Yeah.
instantly brought it back. And the world, I do remember this being oh so cute and so fun that we played a ton of.
They
Um,
skip. Like the little
they
babies
just make
skip
little
in it.
cute sounds as they run
Yeah.
around. This is very fun. Of course, Yoshi's Island for the Super Nintendo was very fun. I think it's also
It
on the
was.
game on the library.
Yeah.
And then I just found this title as I was looking through all the Yoshi titles across consoles. There was a game called Yoshi's Universal Gravitation for the Game Boy Advance, which is just
Okay, that one
not
I
the
did not play.
title. Yeah, not the title I would assume. I think it was called Yoshi's Topsy Turvy in the U.S. and the Japan
Oh,
title was
yes. I
Universal
still did not play it.
Gravitation.
Phew,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, at least there wasn't a
interesting
bad
choice.
translation thing. Yeah.
So, in hopes of not boring our listeners by listing a ton of games, I'm requesting another 6 minute timer. Well, up
Okay.
from 5 minutes last time since
Do you,
I did that, and see if I can do it in 6 minutes this time.
well, do you want
But
me
I have
to actually stop you at a 6 minute mark, or just let you know when it ends up being at
uh,
the end?
yeah, give me a warning when we're down to 1 minute, just so I can speed up a little bit.
Okay.
And I'll try to wrap it up quick. So these are 8 Super Nintendo titles, and again, my
Okay.
goal was to find a two thumbs up game that I had
How
never played before.
how about you tell me when you're ready to go, like officially? I didn't start
I
anything
am
yet.
ready, say go when you hit the button.
Go.
Okay, so first off, we're cutting off 3 games because they got 0 thumbs up. Super R-Type, left to right bullet hell
Really?
shooter, not very interesting. You get
Oh.
knocked down so quickly. If you're looking for a super hard game, then this is definitely for you. But I did not enjoy my time. After playing Ghouls and Ghosts last time on the Nintendo, I had to play the Super Nintendo version of it. Still very hard. I much preferred the Nintendo version, not the Super Nintendo. There was some slowdown frame rate issues, and enemies took forever to spawn, and that wasn't very fun. I am waiting around for them. And then, of course, I had to play Tough Enough, which, for anyone that isn't looking at the box art, is a ridiculous superhero looking person, and then TUFF, next word, the letter E, next word, NUFF. And it was just kind of a subpar fighting game that I didn't really care for. I'm not very good at fighting games in general, though, so maybe it's a good one. I don't know. All right, moving out of the 0 thumbs up, we did get quite a few 1 thumbs up games. Smash Tennis, surprisingly fun and robust. Like it has a cartoony look, which made me think it was going to be a little more um, not realistic. Like it would be silly, like maybe an NBA Jam or a Mario Tennis. But it was actually surprisingly down to earth tennis, and it was pretty good. The controls were not quite perfectly precise, but very ahead of the curve for the age of the game. There were fun little touches, like if you played indoors, there would be echoing sounds versus outdoors, and
Hmm.
lots of characters you can pick from that had all different looks and abilities. And there was even this little sense of goofiness to the game where in the background while you're playing tennis, there'd be somebody walking by serving drinks to people, and then they'd fall over and make a loud noise. And it's like, oh, distraction. And it was just kind of fun. I thought it was great tennis sim. Moving on to Panel de Pon, which I will, after this, I will tell you how to find it because it is one of those. Uh, they haven't actually translated this game. They just ported over the Japanese version of the game, but I thought it would be fun. It is a Japanese Tetris attack or puzzle league type game,
Oh.
except this one is solo. You aren't actually playing against somebody and putting trash onto your opponent's field by getting combos. It's just you against the clock or you against how the puzzle is slowly lifting to the top. There was some kind of two-player mode, but I couldn't. It was only against players, not a computer. So maybe there was a Tetris Attack proper in there. It was pretty fun. Um, it didn't really have anything super unique, and I wasn't, or at least that I was able to discover with the language barrier in place. So eventually, I just kind of moved on because it was like, oh, this is kind of fun, I guess. But didn't quite catch me. Again, from the Nintendo, I played Twinbee, and so for the Super Nintendo, I played Poppin' Twinbee, the follow-up, which was a much better bullet hell flying game, vertical scrolling flying game. It is very frantic. This was amped up so much from the Nintendo game, where there are targets on a lower level or on the ground that you have to fire like missiles out at, and you've got your
Hmm.
normal like forward shooting guns to take out flying enemies, and then you also now had like a big massive screen clearing power that you had limited uses of. So there was, you're dodging things, you're dodging bullets, you're trying to shoot on multiple levels, you've got to manage your health and your super ability, and I really enjoyed it. It was challenging while still being fun. It's got a much more cute aesthetic than an R type, but I think has all the energy needed for a bullet hell style game. Now, oh wow, I still have time. You haven't given me the 1 minute
Hmm.
warning yet. I'm
No.
down to just two games.
Okay.
I actually found two games that I would give two thumbs up to that I had never played before, and one was Mario Super Picross, which does have the English title on it, but is again a game in Japanese that hasn't been translated. Um, it's Picross, or nonograms, as they're sometimes called, is this very fun Sudoku almost adjacent puzzle type where you're trying to use numbers on the outside of the puzzle to create an image on the inside, and it's just
Hmm.
very satisfying. I've always loved it. I played tons of Sudoku, or excuse me, Picross games, many of them on Nintendo. Um, the graphics were pretty rough, not super great, and there are a lot of modern convenience factors
One
in
minute.
Picross games that are not present in this old Super Nintendo game, but it was still very, very fun. I probably would recommend you just go play like Murder by Numbers or something, a modern Picross game, because it's a lot more robust. But if you have the Game Pass, it's super fun. Mario Super Picross, if you like puzzle games, this is fantastic. And last but not least, Puyo Puyo 2, which is apparently a famous Japanese franchise that doesn't always, I don't think it's Puyo Pop, I think it's different than that. Um, but it is another Tetris Attack Puzzle League style game. It is surprisingly hard and super, super fast, and you have to keep up. Just trying to keep up with the computer at like level 2 or level 3 was like, wow, they're going so fast. It's entirely in Japanese. Maybe I picked a hard mode and just didn't
10 seconds.
realize it, but it was so good. I really enjoyed it. So those were my two thumbs up games, and then
Oh.
I was going to go
Okay.
back and say, if you're looking
Goodness.
for Panel de Pawn, there's a
Uh-huh.
purple top banner with Japanese text, and then a picture of a puzzle board and a cartoony red-haired girl. It's next to the title Wild Guns. So that's what Panel de Pawn is.
So they
For
didn't
those
even
that
put
don't
an
speak
English
Japanese.
label on it at all.
No, no. There's probably a half dozen or maybe a dozen games on the SNES and probably the other libraries too, that are just Japanese ports for some reason that they just brought over to the English store.
Because why not?
And hey, it's fun.
Instead of us
Just
getting
keep
the
hitting
like,
start until the game goes.
yeah,
And
instead of
then
us
Puyo
getting the
Puyo,
modded Nintendos anymore, they're just like, we could be legal with this now. We, we
yeah.
are trading with Japan now. We can do this. Like,
And then for Puyo Puyo 2, look for a yellow top banner with a 2 in the background. And then there is a brown haired girl resting her head on a green ball with eyes, some sort of green little monster. It's next to Super Soccer, nearly at the bottom of the Switch, or excuse me, the SNES library. Whew.
okay.
So that's what I played. Ready to talk about the game of the month?
Yeah, I guess so.
All right. So we played the Pokemon trading card game, and I have
Hmm.
just a few interesting dates I thought I'd share before we get into it.
Okay.
So this is Pokemon for the Game Boy Color, and these are all North American dates. In Japan, they were like a year or 2 years earlier than this. But Red and Blue came out in September of '98. Pokemon Red and Blue, the first Pokemon games. And then only a handful of months later, in December of '98, they launched the trading card game. So they had that ready and raring, quite the launch of Pokemon into North
Oh,
America. And then
okay.
in April of 2000, we had the Pokemon TCG card game for the Game Boy, which included the first three sets of the physical trading card game.
Okay.
So that's the dates we're working with. This all came very quick. But how would you describe Pokemon trading card game?
I would say it has elements of the um, traveling around aspect of Pokemon Red and Blue.
Hmm.
But and you do have fights, kind of Pokemon style, but it's all based on the cards. So it's you don't get to just have your lineup of, I know I'm muddling all this because it's very strange. It's Pokemon, but you don't have your traditional moves. It really depends on what cards you bring up. So
Hmm.
it's not a matter, there's no catching. You get cards as you, excuse me, beat other opponents. Like
Hmm.
packs of cards, you can get them in buying in other ways, but primarily it's Pokemon. It really is Pokemon, but with cards instead of just having the Pokemon kind of out in your roster and then you let them out of the Pokeballs. So,
Yeah, it's so it still follows that. We got to collect 8 gym badges. We have to beat the trainers and the gym leaders. We go travel the region, and then we challenge the Pokemon masters to become the best, and collect as many things as we can along the way. This time, cards versus Pokemon, and it follows that format, but in a very simplified fashion. Nearly everything in this game is about playing the actual TCG. TCG, by the way, for anyone that doesn't play a lot of card games, stands for trading card game. Um, so there's a very simple map you move around to go to the various gyms. So there's not really an outdoor space like you would in a traditional Pokemon game
mm,
where you actually have areas to move through. Instead, you just kind of walk across a world map and you arrive at the next gym or some other building that you've gone to. There's really only
mhm.
like a dozen locations that you can go to that are all indoor buildings of some kind with just a handful of rooms. So pretty simple. And then the TCG, the trading card game, is what you spend most of your time doing, battling other trainers. You've got your Pokemon that's kind of upfront fighting. You have Pokemons in reserve. Anytime you knock out an opposing Pokemon, you get a prize card, and the first person to collect all their prizes wins, or the first person that defeats all the other person's Pokemon wins if that comes first. And then there are other cards you can play to benefit, like trainer cards or evolution cards to help power you up as you play the game. But each time, you're starting from scratch, like with a trading card game. You don't level up your
Mhm.
cards or anything like that, like a Pokemon game. Let's go into presentation. how did you like the look of this game that is nearly 25 years old?
Going into it, I thought it came sometime after, and that was even from memory because this was one that we had, right? I think you played it a
Hmm.
lot more than me though.
Yep.
But because red and blue, we had, I had blue, you had red, so we at least played the main Pokemon game a lot. I think you were the one that primarily um, held storage of the TCG one. So
Yeah,
weird
you
history,
probably
probably not
didn't get
too
a
relevant.
chance to play it because I was too busy playing it until it
Yeah.
wore out almost.
So did it really?
I know, but I mean, they're pretty robust little cartridges.
Yeah.
But I definitely play this game a ton.
I remember that part of it. Yeah, so I didn't play it as much, but weird history of it, but it ties into the nostalgia. So playing a little bit of it, like I think because of that I felt like it came way after the
Hmm.
um the Pokemon games when they were first released. And so that was, you know, maybe Mandela effect a bit of memory that I thought that the graphics would be a little bit better.
Hmm.
Even though like Pokemon games for Game Boy didn't really improve graphics wise, now that I think about it, um, I think I just expected this to be a little bit better. It didn't feel as polished as like original Pokemon games, which
Hmm.
which was kind of odd to me. Um, I felt like they could have made use more of just the polygons. They could have done a lot more because you look at what they were able to do with the Pokemon and even the effects that they would do in like Pokemon Red and Blue. Like there just was not a lot
Right.
happening for the TCG, but I don't know if that was on purpose because it is a TCG. Yeah, but it was
I
not
Part of the
polished.
reason I I mentioned the dates earlier is to show just like how quick this all happened in, and the Pokemon TCG game felt very like thrown together in some
Hmm.
ways.
Yeah.
Um, you know, the like I said, you move around, but in Red and Blue games that were older than this, there was so much to the world to explore and Pokemon to collect and a
Hmm.
story, even a simple one. But
Yeah.
little side stories like like the the haunted tower and Team Rocket going around. Those were all in there. There's really no story to this other than be the best Pokemon trainer, and the framework is just to help you move forward,
Yeah.
and give you kind of a reason to keep playing this over and over again. Um, the combat, like you would think, okay, so they didn't emphasize the story or the world, but they must have put all their effort into the trading card game part, the combat experiences were. Uh, but it was basically just a simple menu system.
Hmm.
It did the job, efficiently in a sense, but all you saw was menus and options you can pick from, and then two pictures of the Pokemon card, yours and your opponent's, that you could, see in the center of the screen. And maybe they would have some very simple attack effects, but it was so much less than I remember in terms of visuals. um, Definitely not doing its best on presentation area, but let's head off into gameplay now, where they definitely spent their effort. What do you think about the gameplay of especially the trading card game? We've kind of talked about there really isn't that much beyond the trading card game in terms of
Yeah.
gameplay.
There were things that I liked and there were things that I didn't like. So I found something, and I talk about this a lot in, in the Game Boy games, especially. There's something that's almost algorithm based with it, um, that that I felt like was happening, um, like especially the coin flips. That was an
Hmm.
interesting dynamic, which was in the actual card game, and I forgot about that. Is how much you had to do the coin flips, but like because there's the rewind functionality in the virtual
Oh
console,
yeah.
I kept doing
Did you
that.
did you cheese that?
I did.
Oh.
Oh, I did. I did so much. And for those of you who watch, who watch our podcast, it's funny to say that on YouTube. I'm gonna try to fast forward to when I was doing that and play it because I did. Oh, I did. I mean, I like
So you
so.
said it was algorithmic. Does the
Yeah.
coin always land the same no matter what? Like
Yes.
it's predetermined?
Yeah.
Okay, because
Oh yeah.
I swore that I remembered that I learned how to time it. Because you see the coin flipping and it
See, and that's
basically
what
has the same animation.
I tried different timings. I tried, yeah, like it would do it the same
Okay,
every time. Yeah.
so it just rolled behind the screens, but when you rewind time, you're just playing that same uh,
Uh-huh.
effect over and over again. It probably
Yep.
just has that predetermined.
Oh yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. I
I
definitely believed as a child that I could
Oh, me too.
game out coin flip,
Oh
but
yeah. And that
apparently
was
was
that was
wrong.
something that I feel like was even like put forth in like players guides and stuff, is like, or if you I'm trying to think if we even had online access for that one. There's other games that
Oh
like you look at
no!
online, they're like press the button exactly here and you will get whatever, and it's yeah. But I'm not believing that for a lot of stuff now. So, but I mean, it's the same thing. Like with the baseball game that I played for Game Boy. I think it was last podcast episode. I think I touched on that and tried the same thing, and it just seemed like that was an algorithm. It's like, nope, no matter what pitch you do, they're still gonna hit it in this way, and that's it. And it's like, that's weird and not right. Like, so um that's my theory, at least. And it was like the just that weird thing of like, hey, I'm trying this over and over and over again, and you're still giving me it's the what was it, the exact same thing. So it was those hits where like you had to flip the coin a number of times, and every time you got
Mhm.
heads it would add on to the attack. The exact same thing every time. It would come up
Interesting.
all tails, and I'm like, that seems like an algorithm, not not according to how
Right.
I'm hitting this, because I was trying different ways. So um yeah. So gameplay wise, that was a huge bummer. um the things that I liked are that it was a little bit more random than like regular Pokemon fights, because it was dependent on what cards you were getting and if you could power
Mhm.
them up. And it was almost like, how fast can I power them up, or do I do I want to sacrifice them? There's a lot more decisions, so I actually like that it was still traditional Pokemon fight, but with almost more strategy to it. That's nice. um for it being based as a card game, or based on a card game, I don't know if you could really do anything other than a menu system. That it's I mean, I guess Kingdom Hearts kind of did it in a way, but it's very different too. So I don't know if you could do it
Yeah.
any other way other than a menu. But
Um, there's like modern TCG video games.
mhm,
Obviously that's 20 years of game development. Who knows if they could do that on a Game Boy cartridge, but they have a
right.
lot more of a sense of
Yeah.
you actually moving the cards around. You
Yes.
have a hand in
Yeah.
front of you, you drag cards onto the field, you drag
Right.
cards to attack and things like that. And so it's a lot more. Well, often they're touch based in a sense, but that's probably outside of the scope of the Game Boy Color, which was only a minor upgrade from the original Game Boy. Um,
When I think that's what I'm thinking,
so
yeah. And I guess if they
at
want to keep
the
it to the
time,
very
might have been the
traditional,
best.
yeah. Because I mean, I bring up Kingdom Hearts because I think that one, Dream Drop Distance was the card game one.
Uh, no, that was Chain of Memories for the
Chain
Game
of
Boy
Memories.
Advance.
Sorry. Um, Another one I didn't do quite as much. But did you say Game Boy Advance?
Yes, it was for the Game Boy
That's why I didn't
Advance.
play it as much, and also where I didn't, and also why it maybe didn't do as well. So I did quite well, I think. So Chain of
Yes.
Memories, I think that's why I'm thinking of it, is because I mean, obviously, Game Boy Advance is considered a virtual, nostalgic console now for the Nintendo Switch. So I think that's where I'm thinking of it. Like, that seemed more innovative, but it's also Game Boy Advance, so that's able to do that. Yeah, I don't see the old Game Boy being able to do anything other than menus for a card game, but
Mhm.
um it'd be
I
fun if,
think
yeah, they did it a different way now, but yeah.
I really wouldn't mind a new Pokemon TCG because the real world card game that this is based on, and in fact, you could get these
Still goes.
cards when you were
Yeah.
at the store and play the exact decks that you played in real life. You could make them on your Game Boy and play at home. Um, but the card game has kept going. The latest set
Mhm.
for the Pokemon TCG came out 3 months ago, in the
Yeah.
middle of 2024,
Yeah.
and I was looking at some cards online to see like has the game changed so much that I wouldn't even recognize how these abilities worked and things like that. But it really doesn't look like it's
Mm.
changed a ton. It's definitely updated. I noticed that a lot
Yeah.
of the Pokemon had much bigger health pools. Like the basic Pokemon in this Game Boy game had maybe 30 to 60 HP, and then they could go a bit higher when they evolved.
Yeah.
But it was more like 70, 60 to 80 HP for the basic Pokemon, and all went
Oh.
up to like 300 or something with the
Wow.
evolution. So way
Okay.
higher. Also, the damage was higher. But I wonder if that was to allow you to have more time to power up in the early game so that you could play those
Oh.
big cool Pokemon later on, which wasn't something that happened a ton. Like I didn't really evolve Pokemon that often in this game, and that might
No.
have been because of the smaller health pools. So the game's probably a little longer now than it was back in 2000, but that was just kind of interesting to see that not too much has changed. I saw less cards that used a coin flip, but there were still some cards that used coin flip. In this game, I also had a rough time with the coin flipping. Because you think like, oh, it's 50-50, you're going to get heads tails about the even, it'll kind of even out, but sometimes it just was unfun in that you'd get tails, my Pokemon is paralyzed, I can't do
Yeah.
anything. Tails again, my Pokemon is paralyzed again, I can't do anything. And that just happens
Yep.
over and over, and you're like, the bad luck can really hit harder than the good luck.
I
And
and I
that
was
was kind
thinking.
of
Oh,
rough.
sorry. Sorry. I
Go ahead.
was thinking though, like that's what I ran into a lot was like there were a lot of the games were just not, or like the rounds were not too fun after a while because of stuff like that, and
Hmm.
it was annoying, but it um there wasn't really like a big losing factor. Like if you lost, you didn't really lose anything. You just had to
Right.
figure out something else to do, and I think that's okay, um to have that aspect to it. uh it doesn't feel as bad, I guess, in that way, but
Right.
it's
Yeah,
still
you didn't get any.
frustrating.
You only got new card packs when you won, but if you lost, you could just try again. It
Yeah.
wasn't like there was a game over or anything like that.
Hmm.
Very low punishment for losing and a pretty nice reward. Like one thing I want to talk
Hmm.
about is how cool it was when you're a kid and you can get like maybe a couple booster packs of cards in the real world like a
Yeah.
month.
Yeah.
Instead, when you played this card game, I could get like 20 packs in a day if I just kept playing over and over again, and I get to open them and I get
Hmm.
excited about all like, oh, I got that cool card that I've been wanting so I can build my deck different, and just like that sense of having that all packaged into a one cost experience, rather than having to spend hundreds of dollars at the game store to get the same experience in real life was very fun. And like that was probably the more notable thing that I remember from playing it way back when, is like, yeah, I have every Pokemon card in my game because I've been playing for hours and hours and
Yeah.
hours. In real life, I had a lot of Pokemon cards, but definitely not everyone.
Oh yeah.
um, I did find, it's strange because you have this coin flipping is really annoying, and sometimes deck construction can also be annoying in that you don't get enough basic Pokemon, so your bench is empty too fast, or all your
Hmm.
energy is on the bottom of your deck, so you've got lots of Pokemon, but they can't do anything because you need to play energy cards on them to use their abilities. And so there is this huge luck mechanic in this game that you can
Yeah.
mitigate by being clever about how you construct the deck, but is pretty challenging and can kind of ruin games just by getting bad luck, which is unfortunate. Or a game is very easy because your opponent had bad luck and couldn't do anything, which is unfortunate when that happens, and that happened fairly often. Uh, Still fun, but a little less so because of that luck mechanic. I
Hmm.
was surprised, even getting, 20 cards every time, 20 new cards every time I won. I got three of the eight gym badges, so maybe like one third through the game, and I still
Okay.
didn't have enough cards to build the deck that I was envisioning. It takes quite a while to unlock enough cards that you have all the trainer cards you want, and you have enough energy to make like a single um, element deck or something like that. It took a surprisingly long time, and I remember that I was able to do that, but being a third through the game and still feeling like I've barely stronger than the beginner deck that you get handed at the beginning of the game was a little slow to me, even though I'm getting 20 cards every time I win, which seems pretty fast.
But I agree with that too. Like it was feeling really slow. It was, and I think also for remembering more the regular Pokemon games, it's weird. It's a weird way of encountering everyone that really you have to almost go to the people that you keep beating at first. And it
Hmm.
actually took me a while to figure that out of like, oh, it's okay if I keep going to these people and trying to beat them each time because I'll just keep getting cards and then can make the deck a little bit better to move on to other people. But that actually feels a little boring in that way because you're not exploring anything, you're not really encountering just even anything new with the people you're battling. It's just a kind of the same thing. It's that weird leveling up in RPGs where like you just spend time in the one cave where there's tons of enemies that are coming at you, but it's the same enemies every time, and you're just pushing buttons until you get through it. Like that's what it kind of felt like a little bit. Maybe not quite that bad, but that that made it not as fleshed out as I or fleshed out that I wish it had been. Yeah.
I would say we should move on to story, except there really wasn't one,
No,
as we mentioned before.
I
So
think we
how
just
about we just jump
explained the
to like
story.
final thoughts and rating? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any closing thoughts, or would you like me to go first?
I'll let you go first. Yeah, I'm kind of
So
curious.
kind of like we've talked about with a lot of the games we played on the online library. This game has a unique place in game history. I wasn't able to verify this online or anything, but to me, it's the first time a trading card game, video game, was ever made. That might
Yeah.
not be quite true, but probably the first time it was successfully pulled off. And so many games, like like Hearthstone, one of the bigger TCG games that is only online, only on the computer, a video game, not in real life, and countless card battlers where you have decks of cards that you build and then
Hmm.
you use them to fight in some way. Uh, they probably all can draw their inspiration back to the Pokemon trading card game that we're playing now and talking
Hmm.
about. So it does hold a place in history, but this is a very rough game. Um, Kind of the luck
Yeah.
mechanic that probably plagued this early trading card game hopefully isn't as much of an issue in the modern version of the game. Was a bit rough. The graphics were disappointing. The amount of exploration and interesting things to do, the lack of a story, the bare bones menus, they all just kind of ate away at this memory I had of the game. And so I do think it deserves a thumb up. So I did give it one thumb up, but it just in my mind, it was a two thumb up game, and I was a little disappointed to only be able to give it one thumb up. How about you?
I think I will give it one thumb up also. Um, a little reluctantly because yeah, like you said, it's pretty rough. So I went into it thinking like this is gonna be great. I remember how like how fun. I was remembering some of it, and both remembering the original just card game
Hmm.
and um this game and so thinking like this is gonna be great. I know it's a very basic system, but this should be really fun. And it felt too luck based, like you're saying, and that kind of made it not as fun. And also again like the way that it kind of keeps going through the same things every time, like it felt too mundane in that way.
Hmm.
So I I will say though it was innovative. It still had a degree of fun to it. I just wish it had more fun, so I got to give it just one thumb up for that. So it's weird to say because it's a very traditional. Oops, hitting my mic. It's a very traditional Pokemon game as far as battling because it's just Pokemon to Pokemon and you're using whatever moves you have. But I think that the rest of it didn't make it quite as fun. So one thumb up. Yeah.
So how about the next criteria? Is this game worth playing for anyone with the online pass? Would you recommend somebody check it out?
I would not. I
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
I would not. I'm trying to think if there's any of the other Pokemon games that are on there. Are there?
Oh, I don't. I know like Red and Blue and the mainstream games aren't. There might be another
Yeah.
spin-off title, but there's Pokemon
Okay.
Coliseum for the N64, 1 and 2.
Right.
But there's not a
Not the
ton.
traditional Pokemon games. Um I think I would still say no. Don't do it. Like
Okay.
cuz that's where it's like if for sure there's another if there's like Red and Blue that you can play, then I would
Hmm.
say yeah, don't touch the TCG, but it's a little hard, but I think I'd still say no. It's a little frustrating. You might as well just go out and buy one of the Pokemon games and enjoy that. I
Or
mean,
Pokemon proper, yeah.
hmm
I decided that it was worth playing partially for that historical value, partially just
mm,
because it's novel in that it was a time before microtransactions where you just got all
hmm
of the cards, you just had to slowly unlock them, and that was really cool. And very few games are like that anymore.
hmm
There's probably only like I could think of only like three games where you can have that luck-based like opening a card pack feel without having to spend real-world money over and over again. Um, so I do think it's worth playing. I don't think I'm going to, collect all the badges again like when I was a kid, or play it too much more. But I still think it's going to be a worth playing for me. So we'll give it the half point on that one. How about
Okay.
the nostalgia factor? Did this bring back any fond memories when you played it before, or playing the trading card game? Did it live up to the memory for you?
No.
No.
Just an easy no. Yeah.
I also gave it the disappointing 0 for the nostalgia factor. It was my rose-colored glasses were so much
Yeah.
more rosy until I took them off and played the game again,
Yeah.
which was unfortunate. I had fun, I really did, but it just had so many rough edges that it was irritating in a way to play at times. So that will give Pokemon Trading Card Game a 2.5 out of 6. Not too
Okay.
bad, but definitely we've had better games so far
hmm
that you can check out instead. Let's see. So up next, we have another Chrono Trigger recap pod, and I will do a little like stay tuned for the next episode because we made the biggest mistake we have made
Mm.
yet. You'll have
Oh
to
no.
listen to the episode to find
Oh
out. Chris
god.
doesn't even know
No,
yet.
I don't. I did not think we had any.
It was real bad. We'll
Oh
get to it.
no.
We'll get to
Okay.
it. So after that, our next main episode will be on the N64 title Ocarina of Time, and then
Legend
the
of Zelda,
following episode,
Ocarina of Time.
Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. And the following episode, the month later, will be Majora's Mask, the follow up that was on the N64. Chris and I played a ton of Ocarina of Time, but I didn't really play any Majora's Mask other than,
I did
a
not either.
demo.
Yeah,
It'll be interesting to have that combo back to back nostalgia factor and also a brand new game, but in a classic format.
yeah,
So that'll be interesting. And then you can send questions to Two Brothers Play a Game at gmail.com. You can also find us on YouTube at Two Brothers PAG, and occasionally we post on Twitter at Two Brothers PAG. Um, yeah, I think that'll be it for us. Please review us on iTunes if you can. That would really help us out a ton. And then, Chris, if you were a random Pokemon trainer challenging me to a duel, what would you kind of shout out as a catchphrase as you sent out your Pokemon?
I think it'd be something like "Mountains are nice."
This is life.